Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Finance and Performance Committee meeting of 20th of November 2024, and those of you online as well. I'll start with our opening karakia. Whakataka ki te uru, whakataka ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hia ki ana te atokura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, he hei mauri ora. He pai ana kōrero. There's been no identification of extraordinary business, unless there is.
Just to, well, it's not extraordinary business, but just to put on around the AGM for code, and yes, we need to nominate a proxy, please.
Okay, we'll let that down as an item for the agenda. Thank you. Any conflicts of interest? There being none, move on. There's no public forum this morning. And I do want apologies from Councillor Miller. Oh, hey, Deborah. Good morning. Nothing from Deborah. Apologies from Councillor Miller and Councillor McInnes, or is Sophie's online. Okay, so just one apology this morning.
Councillor Lyle is on holiday. Councillor Miller's coming late.
Okay. A lateness for Councillor Miller. We're moving to seconder for those, Sam, and seconded Councillor Reid. Thank you. Those in favour, say aye. Those against, there being none, moved. Confirmation of the minutes, item number 4. Kind of a true and accurate count of those minutes. Do I have a mover and seconder? Stan moved and Councillor Phil. Sorry, Phil seconded. And those in favour, say aye. None against, so moved. Any discussions on those minutes? No, that's good. Okay, item 5 is the committee terms of reference. The reports, moving on to the reports, I sent through my Kiwis report because it was late, and our kind staff forwarded my report on, and basically it really spoke to it highlighted really our business and economic development strategy plan, and the commitment from our council and our business partners and leaders throughout our community to continue to support and grow the district, and really taking my help and congratulating our CEO, staff, team, mana whenua and business partners for that. So I'm happy to move my report. If I have a seconder, Councillor Lee Glynn. Are those in favour, say aye. Those against, there being none, so moved. All right. Report item number 7, Chief Financial Officer's report. Alison.
Thank you, Shane. Just a few things to update on this. The financial position, both Sarah and Ferranges will talk to that in a little bit more detail, but noting that we do have a surplus thus far. An annual report of work is still going on with Audit New Zealand. We're still working towards our adoption date of December 11th. There's been quite a lot of discussion in past meetings just around development contributions. We have done a lot of work, and just thanking both Deborah and Sophie for their time. We were hoping to bring the report to this meeting, but we've deferred it to February because there's a lot of work that we still need to put into it, and we want to make sure when we bring that report forward, we've got most information that we need. And I think the final point I would just note, just with the project report that Peter and Kamal will talk to, we have taken the opportunity to be a little bit more transparent and dial back some of the narrative that goes in there. So it's a little bit more looking at this from an exception standpoint. And we do have an external party in who's going to present and look at this from more of a dashboard reporting or options that we could look at going forward as well. Tim Mason can talk to any questions with Kamal and Peter at the time.
Thank you, Alison. Are there any questions, comments from councillors? And nothing, there being none. Are you moving on to the next part of the report, or we need to move that part?
So the next part of the report is the dashboard and the finance paper. And I think we'll just hand over to Ferranges and just quickly introducing Sarah O'Connor as well,
Yes,
the lead finance business partner. So guys, I'll hand over to you.
Kia ora. So we're presenting the finance paper. Sarah will talk to the financial performance part and I will talk to the balance sheet.
Good morning. So on the financial dashboard, as Alison has mentioned, a separate paper will be following on the CapEx projects, but it should be noted that the CapEx projects have been rephased for the remainder of the financial year to better reflect the timing of the expenditure on the projects. In the dashboard, there's a simple forecast that has been included, which uses the year-to-date actuals, which is, and then it forecasts October to June budgets to give a projected full-year revenue and expenditure forecast. Development contributions of 5 million have been received year-to-date to September. The dashboard displays the split by contribution types and wards. And as Alison mentioned, the report on development contributions is intended to be presented in the February meeting. So moving on, the summary of operational performance against planned performance. So for the period ended 30th of September 2024, the Council's year-to-date net operating surplus, excluding vested asset revenue and depreciation, is 6.5 million, favourable to budget by 0.8 million. Total year-to-date revenue, excluding vested assets for the period, was 51 million, unfavourable to budget by 2.5 million. The key drivers were reduced receipts for development and financial contribution charges of 4.6 million. This is mainly due to the Eastern Selwyn Sewerage Scheme, which totaled 4.5 million. The timing of when development contributions are received is difficult to predict. So this is offset by increased receipts for fees and charges of 1.2 million due to increased resource consent fees, general receipts, registration fees and building consents. The increase is attributable to the growing population of the district. So for the period ended 30th September, the Council's year-to-date operating expenses, excluding depreciation and amortisation, were 44 million, favourable to budget by 3.3 million. The year-to-date favourable variances compared with the budget are operating projects are 2.9 million favourable to budget. This underspend spans the majority of the operating projects and is expected to catch up to budget in the subsequent months. Personnel costs are 0.7 million favourable to budget year-to-date due to union remuneration negotiations, which were finalised in October, and vacancies. Other expenditure of year-to-date 7.2 million is favourable to budget by 0.6 million. Year-to-date favourable variances include monitoring of water quality of 193,000, conference and training of 120,000, donations and grants of 68,000. It is expected that these expenditures will be incurred in the coming months. General expenses are favourable to budget by 144k. This variance includes 123,000 for the new Resource Recovery Park reuse salvage shop. The unfavourable variances compared to budget are maintenance expenditure of year-to-date 14 million. Year-to-date 14 million is unfavourable to budget by 0.6 million. Transport maintenance costs are over budget by 688,000 for the month, and traffic services maintenance is over budget by 336,000. This is due to seasonal costs of winter ice gritting, snow clearing and road inspections, as well as a high volume of drainage, sealed and unsealed road maintenance. The total maintenance expenditure is partly offset by township maintenance costs, which are underspent to budget by 506,000 year to date. It's expected that the budgets will be spent in the coming months. Consulting, legal and professional service fees are $1 million unfavourable for the month. It should be noted that building and resource management team's fees are over budget by 726,000 year to date. However, these costs are directly recoverable through increased building and resource consent fees. So moving on to the capital summary. The council's capital investment in assets and infrastructure totals 10.6 million for the period ended 30th of September, 0.5 million more than the rephased budget. The capital projects report provides further details on the capital expenditure progress for the financial year. So I now hand over to Ferranges, who will go through the balance sheet.
Thank you, Sarah. I think, Alison, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Sarah was talking through there. A lot of the variances we've got is historically when we've completed an annual budget or a long-term plan, a lot of the budget's just been phased evenly across the 12 months, which is why we're seeing some of these variances. What Sarah and the team are doing is working with each of the business areas to make sure that we've got those budgets phased as they should. So it will take some of the noise out of this report going forward.
Thank you. Thanks, Alison. Ferranges, is you? Sharon?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I was going to look to Steve if you could talk about legal, please, and one of the initiatives that we now got in-house legal to help manage legal costs.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Through you, Chair. Some of you will have met Julie Hands, who is our new head of legal and risk last week at the Audit and Risk Committee. And what Julie is doing is working with a number of heads of departments and the execs to understand where we're spending our legal money. A lot of this money at the moment is going to external third-party providers, and we're seeking a lot of legal advice across the organisation. Julie at the moment is putting together a business plan and an approach that seeks to build up our internal capability, which we're hoping in the short to medium term is actually going to start to impact and put some downward pressure on the amount of money we're spending with external legal companies by bringing some of that skill set in-house. We think there's quite significant efficiencies, both in terms of the timeliness of the advice, but also how the advice is better lined up to our council's way of doing things. But also, and most importantly, from a financial point of view, it'll be far more cost effective, and we're expecting to see some of this result come out in our forecasted budgets starting next year.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Phil?
Sorry, it's not a functional thing, it's a better legal thing, folks, but what's come up as an issue, as you just raised it. The internal legal opinion versus an external legal opinion, while cost is obviously, there's a cost implication. What about a political implication between the two? Obviously, an external, it means it's outside the business, means it's, there's no, how are you going to manage that?
Well, I think one of the things that we're probably not as efficient as we need to be at the moment is the quality of the questions we're asking our external advisors.
Yep.
And by utilising our in-house legal team to refine and really focus in on the question and the advice we really need versus what we think we need, we're going to find some savings just through that process alone. But equally, and we've seen this already, that a quick conversation with our in-house legal team can often stop some of these external questions being posed at all, which is going to save us money regardless. There will always be a place for external legal advice. It's about getting the right advice at the right time with the right question.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Deborah?
Just want to thank you for this piece of work. It's been a long time coming. The other area that I want to actually mention is when we do actually go to our legal firms, is there an opportunity to go out to tender? The reason why I ask this is because the quality or the information that is available from each firm can change when staff change or retire. And we've had some lessons, valuable lessons have been learnt when you suddenly get a lawyer that provides all the information retire from the organisation. And I just wonder whether there is an opportunity to actually review the tendering process of how we're actually getting the right advice at the appropriate time as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I can quickly answer that if you wish, Chair. One of the pieces of work that Julie is currently undertaking is assessing what's the best form of procurement for legal advice and how do we go about procuring that. We are looking at things such as establishing our own panel, partnering up with Christchurch City Council and tapping into their panel, and or running a separate procurement. So that piece of work is underway at the moment, and Julie will provide an update to the next Audit and Risk Committee meeting in February next year.
Thank you. Lydia?
I just had a question from the dashboard and it was around the DC accounts and is West Mountain included in the Melbourne DC accounts? Because I think across the board of where West Mountain is included, it varies depending on what is going on. So you don't have to answer that today, but it would be good to know at some point.
I think if we can hold that one and we'll run through it as part of the broader report, because I think speaking to Peter and the team as well, with the work that we've done so far, there is a little bit of overlaps and it's making sure that we've got everything in the right spot. So when we do have the report, we can actually look at that meaningful. But if we're okay to cover that in February, Lydia.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And just a further question to the DC accounts, and so the receipts that haven't been paid, are they going to be recorded in October or September accounts, because effectively we should see them level out? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the report that will be presented in February will be a lot more meaningful and it will have all those details in it. So it would be perhaps confusing to, provide any details at this meeting without the context. So it will be easier when the numbers are there, if that's all right.
Yep, that's fine. And my other question is why is the elected member remuneration a $20,000 overspend just in the surplus deficit table?
Sarah, are you happy to give an explanation for that one, please?
Yeah, certainly. So the elected members' remuneration is unfavourable to budget due to the Audit and Risk Committee member being unbudgeted, the second member.
I was going to pop in and answer that. What we're reflecting is the independent members' costs being associated to there, but the cost will be actually offset in a separate consultant's budget. So I haven't aligned that budget, so I own that one.
Thank you very much, Lydia. And thank you for the answer. Nicole? Oh, Elizabeth?
Just a quick question on page 23. We've got here that there's, I just wanted to clarify, because you might have touched on it, but I probably missed what you were saying on that. Surge and water under Ellesmere is 0, so that's for the DCs. Just quantifying how that process works so that it's not showing up on here and it's a 0, because obviously they're under a huge amount of development down there at the moment.
Again, that will be addressed in the February report in detail.
I'm sorry.
So page 27, just going back and talking about the consulting, legal and professional services. So the last part on that point is about the building resource management teams over budget. But it's got, however, these costs are directly recoverable through increased building and resource consent fees. So is this meaning that we have increased our building and consent fees already? So that will be covered, or where are we sitting with that?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So we haven't increased our fees and charges, more that we're receiving more applications, which therefore means more revenue into that which is offset by the consultants that we use to process those applications. So effectively, it's a $1 in, $1 out type thing.
Okay, that's what I was just checking because as you're aware, this is something that I've brought up a number of times, is making sure these things that we can recover costs on, that we make sure that we do, because otherwise we're, subsidising these applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Sam?
Yeah, same page 27, the transportation maintenance costs over budget by 688. We were here, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and received a report from staff that would spend over $1 million through the year and had no idea about it until the very end of the year. So it's great to be able to have this raised now and just see where we're tracking. But it's kind of explained as timing, and so I'm just interested in is that really the answer around timing? It seems to me like a lot of maintenance is about to happen on our roads and will continue through the autumn towards the end of the year. So is there any further explanation around that amount?
I think, Sam, I'm happy to take that one. So there's a few things in play here. And I mentioned earlier the budget setting. So the budgets, when were adopted, they're essentially phased over equal 12 months, which has given rise to some of those variances. What, and on the back of the last finance performance meeting, this was a adverse variance in as well. And the team, certainly Sarah and Tim and the respective teams beyond that as well, are working through to make sure when those costs are going to incur. So is it a timing difference or is it a permanent adverse variance is ultimately where we need to land, and what the projected year-end position needs to look like. We don't have that answer yet, but we will have that answer for the next meeting.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any other questions? Comments? We've received,
Still got Franges to.
oh yes, Franges.
Kia ora, thank you. So I will just talk to the balance sheet component of the report. The key components of the balance sheet are the current assets, which are currently sitting at 51 million. The components of that include cash and cash equivalents, receivables, inventory, and financial assets. So in terms of the cash and cash equivalents, we are sitting on 16.1 million, and that's decreased since the year end. And the cash flow was used towards the capital program funding and operational expenditure. So we have accordingly calibrated the debt position to make sure that we are able to meet those capital expenditure dues as they fall due. And so the debt position remains with a headroom to budget at 118.6 million. The external borrowings are currently sitting at 185 million, and that is offset by interest rate swaps of 5.4 million, which means that we are mitigating the interest rate exposure by hedging that proactively. The other components are the payables, and that's 44.4 million as at the end of September, and that has increased by 5.5 million since the end of the year 2024. The majority of that relates to trade payables, and there will be some related to the capital program in there as well. So that's all in correlation. And the receivables component as well, that has decreased. You will noted that it's decreased since the year end by 3.5 million, and that is just in line with the cyclical nature of rates collection and how the receivables fluctuate in line with the rates installments there. In terms of the property, plant and equipment, there is an increase since the year end, which is a positive indication. The projects mainly include Ellesmere to Pines pipeline. There is some roading and urban water projects. There's also $1 million worth of resource recovery park enhancements and $1 million towards Starfield swimming pool build. Are there any questions on this?
Thank you for the report. This is just on the report itself and how we share information. I wonder around the debt position, so much of the conversation that I get into is about the percentage of debt to revenue. And that's really helpful saying that we've got 118 of borrowing still to go, but I'm not quite sure at what point we are now against the lifted ceiling when we got last year, lifted it to 220, and just where we sit against that limit. If that could be included if you'd update us now, if you know that number, but for that to be included in future reports would be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
We can do that because we've actually got the information that goes into the Treasury report anyway.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is just a lift and shift to make sure that we've got the graph visible underneath that narrative.
And there's a second question around reporting too, is and it might be that it comes through the local water done well report, but at what point could we see how things are broken down when water is no longer a part of these? And will that be in February? Will it be later? Just shadowing what the change will look like so that when we talk to the community with our consultation, we've had some heads up on what that is going to look like.
Yeah. So what the plan is, I mean, we'll still be operating with Magic. So we'll hive off a number of GL codes within Magic. So we've got complete line of sight and transparency of costs that are related to that. So as part of this report, or probably the report that goes to the local water committee, we'll be able to identify all the costs that be incurred, the type of cost, and the projected cost going forward as well.
Cool. And then it's also what's left over in council once that's gone. So this report would look quite different with the water stuff taken out.
We will still have a point where we will still be carrying the debt, and the overall debt will still be here. So until such times we've got a CCO established, the debt will still be sitting with the broader SDC. But I think in terms of how we transition between now and the end of the year, we will hive off certain GL codes so we can identify that cost. But what we can do as part of the broader Treasury report with debt is start looking at the debt components. So what we're borrowing relating to, whether it be water, roading, just so we've got that level of transparency.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Any other questions, councillors? We've received report 7.1 and 8. I move that we move those reports together. Do I have a mover and seconder? Sam? Oh, so I can move it and Sam, you second it. Those in favour, say aye. Those against? There being none, so moved. Yep. Now we move on to report 9. Organisational projects and performance, July. Come on, welcome, kia ora.
So today's organizational projects and performance report for this meeting is for the first quarter of this financial year. Peter Edgell and I will present this report. Tim, Mason, Allison, Cameron may add in further aspects or answer further questions. We've got Blake here from Frequency who will further talk about the master project program. Also wanted to point out that this report is written in a point of time. There may have been some movement or progress on those certain aspects of reports, and we'll try and highlight this thing as we go through. So a few points to just highlight for the council. This report is for the capital project expenditure and major projects portfolio across council. As Alison had pointed out earlier, this report has been streamlined rather to show the necessary information on projects and performance and by overviews and exceptions. The CAPEX projects have been rephased for the remainder of the financial year to better reflect the timing of the expenditure of the projects, the known risks, the issues, the design, the construction delivery, and also how it balances it out in terms of financial risk. This can be seen in figure 1. We're still working through the project optimization of resourcing, forecasting, and budgets, and Blair will further talk about that when we go through the master project program. Progress in the first quarter has been to the revised forecast, and it's that can be evident in figure 2 and on the tables. And we have seen a similar trend in the month of October, which is in quarter 2. As expected, the majority of the costs are in the predominant areas that LTP and CAPEX and annual plans been broken for, and that is primarily in the areas of water, transport, then reserves, a bit in digital, and then community facilities. If we turn over to the exception-based reporting, that's on page 31. There are three projects that we would just like to talk and highlight about, and that is the Prebbleton roundabouts. So previously we reported about 5 roundabouts, but now we're bringing it back to the 4, primarily because of the NLTP changes. And rather now we're focusing more on practical completion. So the dates that asset or will be usable will be available to council, but still going through its defects period. So Prebbleton roundabout, we're looking to bring it in before, so by December 24. So it should be open by the end of this month or the first week of December. And we're expecting a bit of an extra extra expenditure, about 1.5 million across the 2 projects that we have got, the roundabouts, and that is on the Shands Hamptons and the Shands Trents, and that has been primarily based on extra contamination and service reutilization, primarily based on extra contamination that we found on one of the properties that we had to do, and some extra services that we had to relocate to fund it. We had put some contingency across it, but this became extra and over it. We're still finalizing the properties that need to be done, so we can't exactly say where we will fall through, but currently we are forecasting 1.5 million, and we're working through to value engineer it and bring it below. Prebbleton reservoir and pipework, there's good news that we're looking to finish approximately similar timing of March to April. So we just forecasted that will be finishing around April. Everything is still on track. The Ellesmere to Pines wastewater pipeline, that is finishing roughly 6 months ahead of time. And that is primarily because of the value engineering, the extra design, groundwater that we had anticipated that we would be hitting, and risks. Those have not been, they have not come through and realized. So that is bringing our program ahead of schedule, and that will also show up in how we spend our money. So those are really good areas that we are performing, and we'll try and show and highlight all these other projects in any exception basis as we go through the year. I'll pass you on to Peter.
Kia ora koutou. From our Apex 2 program, as part of our master project program, we, since this last meeting, have now filled it up with all of our capital projects for the financial year, and have properly phased had our PMs all review and rephase their budgets, which is now the phased budget that you see in figure 1 that we're now using and budgeting to. As part of this process, the PMs and operational managers will be reviewing this forecast every month and updating with any risk changes, any phasing changes, and going forward as part of this report, as well as actuals in the phased budget, we'll also be showing any drastic movements or any movements at all towards that as a separate forecast line, so we can see how much we are changing throughout the month through that phased budget, which also gives us more clarity and able to move other projects. If we suddenly see that one project's moved out, we can endeavour to get another project moved in so that we don't suddenly see a dip in our production capabilities. As part of this, we also have Frequency, who will be talking after this, and they will be showing a new suite of dashboard reporting that will be pulling from this Apex reporting to then provide in this meeting and throughout the ELT members to better see when projects are starting, when they're hitting design phase, construction, and better see the flow of all the projects and how they're working. By doing this, we're hoping that a monthly forecast will allow us to constantly see the changes and not suddenly be surprised, as we have been in the past, that, oh, suddenly this project's moved and we don't have anything to fill it. Basically, we're moving to a more rolling format to help streamline our processes and help with value engineering and all that.
Great.
Thank you.
Introduce you to Blake from Frequency.
Yes. Welcome there, Chair. Yes, might I introduce Blake? Yes.
Blake.
Blake, is it?
Yes, Blake, welcome. Blake, look, just a little bit about the report itself. You'll notice that it's quite different. This month, it's much shorter. Alison touched on it at the start, and our intent is to try and reduce the report and start reporting by exception. We think it makes the reporting more meaningful, to also identify some really clear metrics that ultimately support good governance decisions. It felt like the report had become a bit bloated. There's also been I think Kamal and Peter have understated the amount of work that's gone into providing the reporting this month. There's been a lot of work going on in the last 6 months to better understand our position. And an example of that would be, I think I've spoken to you before about the need to understand what we're delivering and when we're delivering it. So a simple metric around how we're performing is to understand, well, we said we were going to deliver this amount. Well, what did we actually deliver? A few months ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that. This is the first time we've been able to say we understand what we're going to be delivering over the next 12 months. We understand how much we're planning on spending, and we can measure our actual delivery against that, which is a really clear indication of our performance. So really good news story here that in the first quarter, we should have delivered around 15% of our program. We're actually a little bit ahead of that. We've delivered 16% of our program. And in the month of October that we're reporting on, we've actually delivered slightly more than we were planning, which is great. But when I look at this, for me, it's saying, hey, we said we were going to deliver this and we delivered nearly on the money, which means we know what we're delivering and we're delivering to that. So really good outcome. Now, Blake, welcome, Blake. Blake and I have worked together before on some pretty complex programs of work. So Blake and Frequency do a fantastic job at pulling together master programs. The reason that's important is it's really difficult to manage a complex program of work like we have to time and cost if you can't actually see the work that you're doing. So that's kind of been the situation we've been in the past, and there's still a lot of work to do here. Blake is going to present the work that we've done to date, but it's by no means finished. But over the coming 3 months, we expect that the information is going to become more accurate, and that's also going to be able to generate some really clear reporting. Today, we'll take you through some of the reporting metrics that we'll be able to present to this council, and it would be great if we could get some feedback on whether that's valuable. And there's obviously a heap more stuff that we can add in as well. Ties into the reporting, so what you're going to see is some of these reporting metrics coming over into the report in the next few months.
Thank you very much, Tim, and great work, team. Welcome, Blake.
Thank you. Mōrere koutou, ko Blake Mitchell, toko ingoa. Hei kaiwhakahaere hau o Frequency. So yes, as Tim said, I'm Blake. I work for a company called Frequency. We're a New Zealand-based company, and we work in the project management services space. We work with a number of New Zealand sort of major infrastructure clients, the Kiwi Rails and NZTAs of the world, etc., and progressively more with councils like yourself. So thank you very much for having me along today. If you could, next slide for us. So I guess the background here, Tim's brought us in. We've done a bit of a review of the current reporting, sort of when I say reporting, project management reporting. So from an individual project, how does that report its metrics, cost, schedule, timing, etc., and how does that feed up and roll up to a bigger picture so that Tim and yourselves can get a view of the full portfolio. So there's sort of 3 phases to the way we approach this. The first is this discovery review, which we've largely completed. The second is to focus on the master schedule. So what are your projects? When are they planned to occur? How do they interact with each other? And how can we then present that back in a way that's easily digestible for the appropriate audience? Be it a team lead who's got 10 or 20 projects, or Tim's world, or your world where you've got sort of circa 700 odd projects. How do we see that on one page? So we've been through that process. The master schedule is up and running as a tool, and as Tim and Cam have said, there's a lot of work going on to try to provide and update the information into that tool so that the numbers it presents are realistic and accurate. The third step is implementing some additional dashboard reporting tools that will help streamline and reduce the administrative time that's required. If anyone's been involved in the project, you can spend a lot of time as a project manager trying to get the reporting in every month. So trying to make something that's streamlined is really important there. So as Tim said, first today, show you a few of the metrics that we think would be appropriate for this audience. But that would be based on information that's rising up from the ground level of the projects. And a pretty big caveat, what you'll see on the slides today is sort of dummy information for the purposes of illustration and explanation. Doesn't represent what's in your system at the moment because that information is still being populated. So just a big caveat there. So we can go to the next slide. So look, the main finding that we've found, and this is pretty common for a number of clients, particularly councils, is that to date there's a pretty big focus on financial year spend as a key tracked item. And what we're looking to do, and our recommendation is, whilst that's very important, try and flip the focus and really look at project performance over the full duration of the project. So how do we know if a project is planning to go over budget over its full project life cycle, as opposed to the total spend in a financial year across a group of projects. And then as Tim said, sort of trying to create the reporting as a bit of an exception basis. So how do we bring out of those 700 projects, how do we bring up the key issues and risks that are within them? So people are generally very good at solving problems, sometimes good at foreseeing them, but when you have that many projects, we need systems that can highlight those kind of red flags to bring those out to the forefront. You do have a system called Apex, which has been in development by the digital team, which looks like a really good base from which we can leverage. So that would be the input format that the team continues to use. So as Cam was saying, each month they would input updates around the timing of the project, the costs, budget and forecasts and risks. And then what our team will be working with is helping produce I guess the analysis and the dashboards that can then present that information back to the appropriate viewer and audience. So probably covered up a number of the bullet points in the second half there, but the main principle that we always try to work with is that the reporting that comes to the top is built on the fundamentals at the project level to try and minimise the amount of time and effort that needs to be done to try and wrap things together. So what you're seeing is an amalgamation of project level information. And as we say, some key metrics that highlight where does Tim or others need to spend their energy based on indicators that suggest the project might need some more attention. These types of reports generally don't give you the answers, but they do help you direct where you should go and what questions to ask. How do we put those forward? So the main benefit of this is around early warning of delays, early indication that something might be going to go over budget, but also if a project's moved out or delayed, as you were saying, Cam, what can we bring in to replace that project? How do we create some of those efficiencies? Next slide, if you could. So on the screen there, that's sort of a summary dashboard that we would have on the front page. This would be one probably more for Tim and Co to be able to see at a glance, where are all the projects? What's the timing of those? So the first one there on schedule is looking at a list of projects and then the different coloured bars shown in periods of time. When is that project in its setup phase, design phase, delivery or construction phase, and then into its sort of handover and closeout. Down the right-hand side, you can see there's a number of what we call filters, which would allow the user, be it Tim or this group, to filter and select and group that information and kind of slice it and dice it to suit what view they're trying to look at. So if you wanted to look at all the water projects, we can quickly click that filter and it groups to the water projects. Down the left, we have some cost information, and then the lower right, we'll be looking at risks. So from the projects entering their updated status each month, what are the top projects that have key risks that the projects have identified? So how do we helping us filter those key items up to the top? Next slide, if we could. So this is a bit of a zoom in on that master schedule. And so this is, I think, what Tim's alluding to. that ability to be able to see where and when which projects are intending to start or finish. You can see down the bottom half, there's a bunch there that had a perfect start date all lined up. So I think that's indicative that the information is still being populated to phase those and spread them out in the system correctly. But in time, that will start to stagger as you would expect it to be. Next one, if we could. So in terms of metrics that we thought we would bring to this group, obviously for Tim and the sort of team leads and project managers, there'll be a suite of dashboards and reports that help them manage at a project or group of projects level. But for this group, there's a few metrics we thought we would bring through. So the first around tracking of phase gates. So your current system, a project makes its way from sort of setup and then through a gateway, if you will, to go into the design phase, similarly into delivery, and then after delivery into that kind of handover closeout. So tracking the number of projects that are progressing through those can be a nice early indicator of how are we going to be able to deliver going forward. So the proposed metric is to kind of track from our planned baseline at the start of the year. In the month of, say, October, we've finished how many projects should have gone through gate one. And the example data here, the top left box says we had 8 projects planned to go through the gate. We actually had 6 go through, so we were 2 behind. So instantly we know there's 2 projects that we should probably go and have a look at and understand why they missed their gate and what are we doing about that. Again, the dashboard won't give you the answer, but indicates where to go to ask the questions. Similarly through the other gates. One of the main things we found, and particularly important, the big program that Tim was referring to, we worked on previously, if the projects aren't getting through design, then they're definitely not going to be able to spend the money in construction if that construction is delayed. So tracking those early stage gates can be a really good indicator that we may have an underspend coming in the construction phase of those projects, which is where the bulk of your spend is. So a really good indicator to see what's kind of coming up ahead. So we track things on a month to date, year to date, and then what's our forecast for the year, being those three rows. So open to questions there, or we can save them to the end. Take them to the end, move on. Yep.
So is there any questions? Thank you very much, Blake. Great. Are there any comments or questions or insights, Elizabeth?
So do we as governors have access to this site, unfortunately, or are we just getting the reports based on what you guys are able to track from it?
No, the intention's not to give you access to this reporting, Elizabeth, other than at these finance and performance committees to bring them to this committee and speak to them. Rather than giving you a suite of, I think the important thing with a lot of these metrics is that we're able to sit down and talk you through them. There can be some risk if they're left up to interpretation. So at this point, the best option I think would be to bring them to this committee meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Sharon?
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I think what you're seeing here is our commitment around our quality improvement, our investment into digital services, all things that councillors have supported through the long-term plan, and about having that transparency for you as governors, but actually also for our community. And we haven't had that around the capital programme to this extent before. And, we know that it would perhaps have not been delivering the capital programme over a number of years at council, and we're really excited to get to this place. And as you well know, you have made this one of my KPIs, and so it's really great to see this initiative coming to life and bringing that visibility and transparency for you, so that you can ask those governance questions and you can see how the commitments made in the LTP are being delivered.
Thank you, Sharon. Sam?
I just wonder, is there more you're going to show us, or was that the end of the?
There's 2 more metrics which we always run through, but TSC, I was conscious of time as well. So this one here shows to look at the overall, as we said before, the project budget and its spend in its entirety. So the lines on this graph indicate the total spend over the life of a project, and the bars indicate the monthly spend. So if you look at the top row, again, this is all example data. The budget for the month was $1 million. That project or collection of projects, total spend was 800,000, so 200,000 behind. We probably have some questions to ask. What did we not deliver so that we were slipping behind? In the year to date, for example, that's forecasting for that group of projects to be 3.2, so 800 behind their budget position. Same in the full year forecast. A really important metric to keep an eye on that'll be really useful month to month is that last line there, which is to look at what was the previous month's forecast for the spend. And often we get stuck on looking at the current position without being able to acknowledge the progress or improvement that's been made. So that's a key one to be able to track. How has that project's total position changed from last month as a good key indicator to see how things are moving. And then the last one was really a way of just kind of tracking how many projects are forecasting to be under budget, on budget, or over budget by the end of the project. So again, if we're talking total dollars for this group, the numbers kind of get lost and blurred, but looking at sort of numbers of projects that are performing or predicting to perform well or not so well is a pretty good indicator of how we're tracking. And again, that last row is probably a key one. How has that number changed from last month? Have we got less projects this month that are looking to be over budget than last month? Are we improving our position or are things slipping? So those were the three key ones we thought would be most relevant for this table. So yeah, open to questions again. Thank you very much, Blake. Seth?
Yeah, I've had some comments on all of it, on both parts of the report. I think it's really great that we've now got some of the processes and displaying data matching what happens in the real world, and that's a big shift for us. So thank you for the work that's been done, and I guess that's part of the investment, as you mentioned, Sharon, that we're trying to make into the space. Secondly, it looks good, so being able to present data in a way that's easy to understand rather than trying to figure out things or see Excel spreadsheet graphs turn up. This is much nicer to see, so thank you for that. And a couple of questions around phasing, and I guess this is on page 30 of the report, and it's the bar graphs. And it relates the red, the orange and the blue bar graphs, and also relates to the pie graph that's earlier. We've talked about 15% in Q1 was the plan, and that we delivered slightly above that. But July is like, we weren't intending to deliver much in July, and we exceeded our expectation. Is that a result of it being a wet month and it's going to happen every winter? And when I look at the graph, it's not the case. I'm not expecting that will be the case, and it's just a July thing. Or is it like a post LTP, it takes time to ramp things up type? What's the reason for July there being so low?
It was a mixture of exactly what you said. So there were some parts that were still invoices still coming through, where we had forecasted, but we had also anticipated that we would have already spent so much by this period of time. We didn't expect certain wins, for example, like in Ellesmere Pines pipeline, and that actually showed us that we actually delivered higher. So there was a bit of value engineering design, a mixture of aspects that came through. But we normally try and keep July lower in terms of spend.
Part of it is also there were some late claims that came in that were in relation to July but did not get recognised till August. So if those had been recognised properly, August would be a bit lower, July a bit higher, and you would have actually seen that proper ramp up from July through to November and things, rather than a big spike in August.
Cool. Okay. I guess that's also part of thinking about our decision last week not to do an annual plan. This is that we don't end up with uncertainty leading to a lower month, because 1 month out of 12 being lower means the overall year's delivery is slightly lower than it could have been otherwise. Really interesting to see that 96% of all our capital works is in transport and water. Like we've talked about 85% over the next 30 years being in that space, but in the last spend in Q1 of this year, it's been 96%. I think it's a really important thing to share with our community about how we're spending their money on things that are very essential infrastructure. And there's one other piece. The catch up. So we've got 14 million as a forecast carry forward. And I guess this is in relation to the metric you last mentioned. what are we going to do to move that? And if we did move it, and that by the end of the year we only see there's going to be 10 million moved forward, I'm guessing that change will be captured in this reporting. So we'll see that we've improved our situation. But are there projects that you're currently looking at bringing into this financial year that sit further out? And is your expectation that we'll still sit at about 14, or is your plan to get that to 0?
Good question. It is a mixture of all of those parts. So at the moment we have said 14 million. Some parts of that was connected to the NLTP, where we were unsure of what's going to happen. So we had phased them that we would only be doing a certain amount. But now we have clarity moving in. So the next report will change that aspect. Our whole part is to come to a baseline and deliver on that baseline. There will be certain projects as we phase through that even Blake had said, we're trying to bring them forward. If there's a part that is like on a certain project, it's causing us any constraints, we can't purchase the land or we're getting consent issues, then what other projects can we bring forward? So it's a kind of a moving beast that we're trying to move forward and deliver at the same time and see where can we do the best bang for the buck.
Right. I support that. And I mean, 15 million push forward to next year just makes next year $15 million harder to deliver. So everything we can move forward to balance that out. Yeah, appreciate the work on that.
So hence we're trying to work on the program or the project portfolio. So how can we deliver from the beginning to the end and at what stages?
Cool. Thanks. And thanks, John, for bringing this up. It's really cool.
Thank you, Sam.
Cool. Sort of pick up on Sam's at that 96%. I hadn't actually looked at it that way, but it's two areas. Media, I wonder whether we can do some stuff with the media around getting that information out, because that'd be something that our communities would really need to know, that the belief that we're spending money on this X, Y, and Z, in fact, most of it is on water and on roading. Blake, I have a question around the stuff that you've presented here. Is it possible to get the metrics here are great, by the way, and I can see how they work. Is there a measure against the rest of the world? Like, example, if we're seeing the rest of the world is having similar problems to what we'd be seeing here, or opposite would be opposite, we don't want to see it. Is it possible to get that sort of metrics there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's probably some metrics around where your money is being spent, how much of it is going into design versus internal spend versus construction. Metrics around, I guess, productivity, what is a typical project cost, are really difficult because every project has so many intricacies and complexities and nuances around it. But there are definitely some comparative items that we could look to pull in for you. Certainly with comparison against perhaps some other clients that we are aware of. But yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good to just see how we're going against the rest of the world.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. We'll just have a look.
Yeah, Jane, thank you. Are there any other further questions? Oh, yes, Lydia.
My question was just on the slide back, and then Shane also, Sophie's got her hand up. So just the dollar value when we are, I guess, below budget, does that take into account for projects that we've actually delivered under budget if we did do that?
Yeah,
because that would have been a red light in my mind.
Correct.
If we've delivered under budget.
So the carry forwards, there's a part of it where we have done value engineering. Unfortunately, the show has carried forwards, but in the future, we're going to try and show that where we have done that saving.
Yeah, cool. And I really support this type of reporting coming to this committee. I think it's really good. I'm pleased to see. I guess I would have liked to have seen the slides before today because I didn't know that you were coming or we were talking about this, and that may have been me being away last month. I don't know, but I had questions on the reporting of, what are we going to see going forward for CapEx projects and whatnot, and actually that we would only see something if it was cost or time status variance. But with this type of metrics, we'll actually have a better idea across organisational performance, which is what we should be looking at here. So, I really support this type of reporting. Thank you.
So, sorry, Lydia, today was a show and tell. Tim talked about that last finance and performance meeting to say we were going to do a show and tell to show you the great work and the initiatives. And this is just to give you a wee taster about this is how we're going to be reporting going forward. And then obviously it's going to evolve as we get better at it. So, yeah.
Sam.
Just to follow up what Lily's just raised around the overall reporting back to us. Is that just in the annual report now, or will there be 6 monthly reports on things like
frequency
on the things that aren't just by exception, but the things we told the community we're going to report? How are we going to find out that, you know, and celebrate the work that's been done and talk about some specific projects if all we see is the stuff that it isn't quite working as well, or we're a bit worried about maybe not delivering? Is that going to fit into this report every now and again, or is there another way to sort of show that?
Look, thanks, Sam. I'll have a think about that. The intent of this report, I think, was to shorten it right up, make sure it was really meaningful and specific to performance. But you raise a good point. So let me have a think about that, and I can figure out what platform would bring back some good news stories and just some stories of interest. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Deborah.
Thank you. Look, just on the back of what Sam's just asked. Sorry, I do want to do Sophie first. Okay, sorry, Sophie. Just on what Sam's actually said, from a governance perspective, it is important that we understand the reporting that we're getting. It's also important that if we think we're not getting information, that we have an opportunity to request it or ask for it, and it may be out of timing from your 6 month perception. And that's why it's important for me to have sort of some regular regime of reporting on major projects. And I mean, the last thing you want to be swamped with is Office of the Auditor General requests for information with regards to an area of which may be of public interest to a particular community or a group within these reporting. So just want to understand, you know, it's not just going to be reported in an annual plan 12 monthly. Is it going to be reported in each financial and performance? You said you'll think about it, but can you come back with some sort of answer at the next meeting, please?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I will. Look, I think there's stuff that's still missing from this report. We're doing quite a lot of work around risk at the moment, and next month we would like to include that. So we have Sonia, our new risk manager. We're working really closely with her, and through that we would be able to identify items of public interest or things that I think you and Sam are talking about. So I don't think this is a case of you've seen quite a reduced report. You saw the identification of 4 projects of interest for this report. I would expect that in reports to come there would be a longer list once we've identified a criteria of things that, you know, this council would be interested in receiving feedback on. So certainly items of community interest would be a trigger that would mean that we could report back on those things.
Can I just respond to that question as well? Just from us as a governance group, the plan is to have these meetings as the place of reporting, not each one of us going and asking for a particular report or narrowing down on particular bits of information. So if we've got things that we want reported as part of finance and performance of our organisation, then raise that with Shane. And Shane, and you've worked to bring the information that's sensible and with staff to this group, because the whole point of this was to not over-report and to have the key metrics brought to us. So we'll work with you as chair of this group to make sure that happens for everyone here.
Got it. Sharon, do you have anything before I ask your question, Sophie?
Let Sophie go. I'm going to do a summary if that's okay.
Got it, Sophie. Oh, sorry, Alison, did you want to have something? I'm so popular right now.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on Deborah's comment just with the Office of the Auditor General. So just going back to the emphasis and matter point that they raised at the long-term plan on the risk of the capital delivery. So that's something that both myself and Tim will work through to make sure that whatever we're reporting, so we're not blindsiding anyone at the 11th hour to say that we're going to get an emphasis and matter point coming through from Audit New Zealand.
Thank you, Alison. Sophie, please.
Yes, kia ora. I think just about all the questions have been asked and answered, so I'll be really quick. I do quite like figure 3 in the report because it is really important to keep front of mind. I think that the vast majority of spending goes on those large infrastructure projects, because a lot of the conversation that you hear in the communities, they seem to think that it's all going on vanity projects or something pretty. It's actually almost all going on the stuff that you don't notice until it goes wrong. And it's kind of, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's the water underground, it's the roading. You notice the potholes, you don't notice all the other good work that's going on in that space. And that is where the money is keeping people's lives working. But what I was going to ask, it's not really a question, it's just a request, that could we please get these slides either in the minutes or added to the agenda for record, just because it is really interesting, and it would be I'd like it to be more than just something that we see on the screen at this meeting now that you have to go to YouTube to find, even if we don't see the dashboard every time ourselves. It's something just to show, look, these project management tools are being used and developed and used appropriately for our organisation now. Thanks.
Hello, Sophie. Thank you. I'm sure that can happen. Sharon?
Yeah, thank you, Shane. What I just wanted to say is that kind of feeding into what Deborah has asked and what others have mentioned, in terms of we do want to be able to provide a report, and that's part of Tim Harris's requirement in his new role, is when we look at the long-term plan and we have the community asked, you asked, we have done. And it's about being able to show that we have delivered everything that we've committed to in the long-term plan, because as we know, some things have got through cracks. So one of the things I've asked for is that ability to bring a paper or something forward that says, here are all the things we committed to across the long-term plan, and this is what we're delivering on. And that it goes much broader than infrastructure, by the way, that there's a much more broader component to this. And I think it's really important that we provide that to demonstrate to our community what we have delivered against in terms of the long-term plan.
Kia ora, Sharon. Thank you. And just maybe a follow-up from me. Thank you very much, Blake, for the presentation, and the team for committing to this type of reporting. It does bring us more succinct reporting that we can then take back to the community as governors and councillors. Often the reporting is detailed, and the detail should be in there and should be accessible to councillors. I think this type of reporting provides a richer data set with qualitative data that we can then easily communicate that to the community without getting too technical and then switching off. I think it's some other time. So getting there quicker, more efficiently, the reporting definitely with the ability to forecast or previous spend is something that consistently comes up around the table with conversations. Sharon, you alluded to it, and that was going to be my question around the broader capacity and capability for this type of reporting. Thinking renewals and maintenance and that type of thing across the organisation as a whole. Does it have capability? Has that been looked at at all?
Yes, so I suppose from my side, certainly this type of tool and system is very scalable, and I guess it's a question for somebody from Selwyn, I suppose, as to how those different parts of the organisation link in and feed their project info in. But from our side, the reporting and dashboard side, absolutely not a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge step in the right direction, and it's a commitment to deliver on the KPIs and what we've asked for. So I appreciate the reports, the presentation. Do I have a move in the seconder? Or from you, Tim?
So Shane, to add something after your summary, but I just wanted to make sure I was really clear that following Sophie's questions, is that the intent is that these metrics and this reporting will become part of the finance and performance paper. So we're just going through a process at the moment of making sure we've got the right metrics, but you will see these as part of the finance and performance paper.
Be very comfortable with the metrics that are showing at the moment. Perhaps, as Sam said, the good stuff as well. So with that in mind, do I have a mover in the seconder? Cool. And Sam. Thank you. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, so moved. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Steve. I will move on now to report number 10, procurement policy refresh. Nick. Welcome, Nick. Morning, mate. Just grab one of those mics and push the right hand button and you're well, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here today in Tim's absence. Today, I'll give an update on our procurement policy refresh, which has been a good 12 months in the making. What today is intended for information only, and the proposed procurement policy will be tabled at the next council meeting on the 11th of December for adoption. So this is, purpose of today is an early heads up, bit of a story, how we got here. Final draft of the policy, and for me to highlight, what we've done, where we're heading, the key changes. And at the end, if there's any immediate feedback or questions or thoughts, more than welcome to hear, and we can certainly build that into the next council meeting in advance. So where we came from in terms of our current procurement policy was adopted in 2018. It is a public-facing procurement policy, so it's part of all the policies which are available for the public to see. It was created in the infrastructure and property team, so it's very much designed around the horizontal builds, the vertical builds, and maintenance contracts. It didn't really cover all of council at that point in time. Where I come in with a pretty good brief from Sean is to really come back with all of council approach to procurement, to develop frameworks, structures, guidelines, policy and standards, which will pretty much give a uniform approach across all of council, but also to be bold and to not just for us, however key quality and total cost is of vital importance to us, but what secondary outcomes can we bring into procurement to extract some wider public value with what we're doing. How we've got to this point over the last year, we've had a number of workshops, EL2 reviews, heads of reviews. It's been a very collaborative process to get to this draft, and engagement across all the teams, and not just the IMP. It's been, the sports facilities, libraries. It's been digital, the works, development and growth. So it's been.
We shared with Mana Whenua as well.
Yes, we did. So through those workshops, through refining, we've got to the final draft we have today. Where we are heading is, again, really getting into more progressive procurement policy. So, as I said, quality and cost key, but it's how else across our community can we benefit and add public value through our procurement. So what this policy is proposing, a number of ways, and it's in line with the government's broader outcomes approach of what environmental benefits, cultural benefits, social, economic, our procurements can do, and the policy will be pushing that at least one, if not more, of those secondary outcomes are built into all our procurements and tenders going forward. Of course, each project and procurement is going to be different, so there could be different levers we can adapt, and the methodology and the ratings of how we apply those secondary outcomes will change project by project, depending on what it is we're actually trying to deliver for the community. Key changes which we've built
through this process, apart from the public value, more graphical, these are our public value pillars. It's reinforcing it is very much across the foundation of quality and total cost of ownership. So it's not always lowest price, which should win the day. We've now got a number of factors we'll build into how we select potential suppliers going forward. Key changes, it's maximising value, so not just price, but the overall value from our procurement. So introducing a bit more of a progressive social procurement policy, bringing those community public values, it could be however big or small each procurement needs to be. Having the supplier which has a confirmed carbon zero policy in place is a big win for us as well. So not necessarily these secondary outcomes will push cost on us. It's about thinking about the region as a whole and what benefits suppliers can bring that we can leverage from. But a lot of what's happened in the past has been low price conforming, particularly around NZTA procurements, and that's come through in previous meetings. So proposing within the policy to think a bit more total cost of ownership for the life cycle of the goods, the service, or the works that we're procuring. So we're not just thinking what's the immediate cost, we're thinking about the whole life cycle of what it is we're purchasing. So if it's facility, when we're analysing, have the finance team look at the electricity to run, the recovery, the end of life, what do we do with the building? So it's a bit more considered approach to how we select suppliers. Fit for purpose, this will be organisational wide, so it's not born in any particular area across council. It can be applied to all. We are increasing the thresholds across all of council. Our current threshold for open procurement is $40,000, and that has been a little bit of a handbrake in terms of the cadence of work we are doing and work we're trying to achieve in terms of purchasing. It is the lowest across all the councils we've sampled across New Zealand. The average or the norm is pretty much $100,000, which would trigger open procurement across council. So we have been below. So this new policy will lift that to $100,000 and above, recommending for open procurement, which is in line with MB's recommendations as well.
And that also fits with our new delegation. So this has lots of threads into our new delegations, our strategies, and that this is about pulling together a comprehensive policy.
That's right. Correct. It's giving more procurement options as well in the buffers between 40 and 100. That as long as we're getting 3 quotes, we're demonstrating we have done some market approach to extract the best public value we can. Now, with infrastructure and property, costs have certainly gone up on delivery and projects. So this is a 2-tier threshold approach where the infrastructure and property team will get a slightly higher bar before going to open market. But again, still below that $250,000 figure. We are still expecting, due diligence in terms of are we getting the best value for money? So by seeking quotes, and those quotes can be done through the government electronic tendering platform, so still transparent and visible, or outside of that process. So we're giving them more options to improve the cadence and the speed of delivery, particularly with the work program they do have. Reducing risk, what we were very keen to do is ensure certainly our open and invited procurements are all run through the government electronic tendering system. It's a one-stop shop which has, it certainly helps in terms of ensuring we're being ethical in how we're procuring goods, because it's all feeding through into one system and not emails flying around. So it adds to the transparency and also complies with NZ government's rules of procurement. We've built into the policy our anticipated supplier code of conduct, so what we expect from suppliers going forward, which it's all in the draft. I won't go through each point. And this policy, and I'll come on to the supporting standards we've developed, complies with the NZ group procurement's rules of procurement. So we're aligning ourselves with those rules, which 99.9% of all public spending territories, crown entities are mandated to follow. So it just adds that layers of compliance and assurance in our purchases ultimately. The standards, so the policy is going to be more the why, and with the standards more the how we're going to procure. So the standards will be a non-external facing document which supports this policy, which will actually tell each and every team or anybody doing procurement across council the how. So from procurement planning to methods of sourcing to how they manage procurement, evaluate and award contracts. So we've gone for a two-tiered approach. The policy being the story, the standard supporting that, which will be a live document, which is the how. So then we've got that consistency across all of council, and we're not doing different things for different people, essentially. The next step, as I said, the draft policy will be tabled for the next council meeting on 11th of December, I believe, and Tim will be doing that.
Yeah.
So for now, it's if there's any immediate feedback or questions or thoughts.
Sharon, you have something further to add?
Yes, thank you, Nick. And there's a couple of reasons why the policy is coming here first as a draft for you as a group to have a look, because I'm really excited that this is a policy based around best practice. This is significantly stepped up levels from where we have come from in the past, and it's about being really transparent. As I've said, it fits and links into our delegations, into our strategies, and it's enabling around our ability to deliver, but also to demonstrate to you as governors in the finance and performance meeting around our ability to hold ourselves accountable for our expenditure. Also, I just want to acknowledge that we're losing lovely Nick, who has done a fantastic job and brought us into best practice. He's got a wonderful promotion outside of the organisation, and I'd be very sad to lose him. So it's also a bit of an opportunity to ask our expert, because I don't think you're going to be at the council meeting to ask any in-depth questions. So it was also that opportunity for show and tell. So Nick, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for the great work that you've done and the engagement to develop this policy and to bring something forward that is best practice and links inextricably to how we use ratepayer money.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and thank you very much, Nick. Elizabeth.
Hi, in Appendix A, so under the environmental pillar, A1, so you've got obviously a good list of what things should include. One of the things that would be great to see in there is for our policy on tree canopy and protecting existing trees where possible, or looking at replacement options being included, because this is just something that I felt was missing, but is very close and dear to the heart of our communities at the moment.
Yep, absolutely. That could be incorporated. Yep.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Bob?
Yeah, just in a smaller rural community that we live in, there's a lot of people think that procurement doesn't get down to the smaller companies. And that they, there's a lot of people in our community have got the ability to do the work, but don't get the contract. And actually, you're saying here about saving money in a lot of cases, smaller businesses possibly will, but it's just something that keeps coming up year after year, and it's something to think about.
Yeah, and we've built into the policy and standards, and obviously every procurement could be different depending on what it is, but you can add a weighting around local suppliers, so that can form part of the overall scoring and how we make that decision as well. So supporting local is very much a pillar of the economic pillar we've had in this policy.
Sorry. And that, Bob, you've raised a really important point, and we've been very cognizant of this, is that we don't want to see smaller companies or individual suppliers excluded or precluded, which is why, as part of the social aspects that Nick's described and written into the policy, allows and enables that to occur, because we do want to see local businesses be able to provide service.
Thank you. Deborah?
Thanks for this policy. I had a similar question to Bob, but he's asked it. I guess following on from that, some of our larger projects and most successful projects that we've actually completed in the past have actually been worked alongside the community. And I'll name two that I am very aware of. One is the Springston Sports Pavilion, and another one is Waihora Taitapu. And they were done alongside professionals within the community that were able to give their time at a reduced cost, shall we say, to the community, because at the end of the day, we all live in a community. We all benefit from that facility within the community. And those sorts of projects have actually turned out to be really cost effective for us in a monetary value. And we've got drawn away from that particular model. And it seems to be that council sort of knows best on how to provide everything from A to B, whereas a community, if they have the ability, expertise, would like to be involved as well, and maybe they could do some fundraising through their not-for-profits to have some sense of ownership. And I just wonder, can that model be incorporated within this policy?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I have got it noted in there about working with local community and or not-for-profit or social enterprises as well.
It's in section 4 under social. It's explicit there.
I've got it in front of me. But this is more for larger projects that actually happened through a special procurement process where a member of the community was a project manager. So they came on board. They offered their time. Then they had the builders. They came on board. They offered their time. And for example, a facility got built for half the cost that it would normally have cost council to actually build. And this is, we all live in this community. We all have to share. So there are those opportunities, and I would not like to see those opportunities not be included in this policy.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Who's next? Grant?
Can I just go back to the origins of this document? Is this a bespoke document for Selwyn District Council, or has it been based on another council's or procurement policy from somewhere else? Is it AI generated? Where did this document come from?
It was produced by myself ultimately, but in collaboration with other team members and workshops within council. It's something that I've also delivered through ECAM in a previous life. So I've had that kind of, certainly not AI, it's all come out of my own head, but follows a lot of the general good practice and principles which MV are encouraging as well.
So I guess, to be fair, there's a lot of good stuff in there, but I would raise serious concerns about this around, let's put our feet in the shoes of the people on the other side of the equation who want to be successful in procuring from us. We're raising a number of more hoops for them to jump through around social and environmental compliance, and it says you've got to have tick every one of the 4 boxes, at least one, in your procurement model. And I've been here long enough to see this used to be called non-price attributes. And using an NZTA example, we've paid several $100,000 more for a set of traffic lights, which could have been delivered by 2 companies which are NZTA qualified. I haven't seen the benefits of those non-price attributes flowing through at all. I'm a firm believer in a more commercial approach, and I don't use it often, but the word I would use today is woke, butterflies and rainbows in this document. Feel good stuff, which makes us all feel good, but has no relevance to the commercial world around procurement. We can put all this woke stuff in as much as you like about, you want to have the social outcomes and everything else, but at the end of the day, our ratepayers want quality infrastructure delivered at the best possible price. And I'm not sure that we're advancing this through creating more steps to go through to get to the coalface of procurement. So as it stands at the moment, I couldn't support this document when it comes back to our next reading at the council. I'm just fair warning that I won't be supporting it like this.
Thank you, Grant. You have a response, or Lydia?
I had a point around so the principles in the charter, and in point 1 where it says work to create opportunities for local, and it says Canterbury businesses. I just wonder, if Selwyn businesses should carry more weight there. We talk about sustainable Selwyn and being able to provide what we need, and whether that should just carry some more weight rather than Canterbury wide. And I guess I would have thought that New Zealand employment law would have sort of ticked all the boxes around integrity and whatnot, rather than international employment law. But again, I'm not an expert in that, but I've employed a lot of people in my time. And I guess it is, for me, it is around some of the weight that some of the things in here do carry, and that, value for money may not actually carry as much weight as some other outcomes. And I have concerns about the community and what they are going to think about that.
Thank you. Sharon?
Again, I just want to add in that the community and our local businesses are very much the heart of this policy, in terms of it is written in a way that it does not preclude or exclude, and I think that that's really important. And as Nick explained, there is a wide breadth contained within this policy that allows for large projects, and it also allows for smaller projects, and that's really important. And in terms of just aligning it back to the likes of Envy, etc., as to what is good practice, and I think it's really important that as council we follow good and best practice, but also be an enabler, and this policy certainly allows that to happen. Irrespective of, I appreciate and acknowledge you feel that it is, this is not similar to what I've seen in other places, and it certainly is, I think, more in keeping around the professionalism and the direction of travel here at SDC that does not exclude our local population.
Yes, Nicole, and then you, Sophie.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sharon, that clarification, because it's quite obvious in there, it's got for each of the attributes, this may include and done a listing of that. It's not saying that it needs to have each of those being considered. I like what we've done, and we're looking at these things wider on these different attributes as opposed to looking just totally on price or whatever, because there is a broader spectrum and of what is out there and what is able to be procured, and we should be looking at these sorts of things. One thing, also Elizabeth, good point bringing up about the canopy cover, and we're obviously going to be talking about things like that this afternoon with our meeting. But looking at the internal resources and policies, so we have Future Salwin as referenced, and there are a number of policies that come under that, but I see also there's sustainability policy, which is a separate one as well, which I would think comes under Future Salwin. So one that I would bring up as well is a climate change policy. If we're I'm not sure how we're sitting with pulling out individual ones, because we've got this overarching Future Salwin and how that goes going forward.
Yeah.
Sharon?
Yeah, no, thank you, Nicole. It's a good point. And I think we've talked previously that Steve and his team have got to work around policies. So we know we've got a large swathe of policies that need to be updated. And we're developing a system where policies are live and can be updated and reflect strategies, reflects the work of the strategic portfolio groups, etc. So that's a significant body of work that's will be in train next year.
Yeah, because the climate change policy is well overdue for being reviewed anyway as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sophie.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you very much for this. I actually really like it, which probably isn't much of a surprise. I like that it fits with Waikirikirikitua and the economic development strategy. I like that best practice is seen as including positive and negative externalities, not just the profit line and potential savings, because we're not asking potential suppliers with this to meet a strict array of criteria. There's quite a lot of leeway for how they demonstrate the different areas. It would be good to see an example of how a contract is assessed, even just like an example project, just to see how it might work in practice, even if it was a PX demonstration or something like that, for us to understand more about how it would work in practice, because obviously it's a wee bit different to how we're used to seeing things. But I can see it as being a positive thing for our area as well. I mean, you look at things like the changes to how school lunches are going to be funded by the government, and that idea of centralising everything to save money looks like it's going to destroy local businesses that had been providing good outcomes in a local area. So I would, it would be good to see some examples if possible, even if it was just like a rough overview. But either way, I'm happy with this. So thank you.
Sophie, great suggestion. Sam?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like it's timely that we're doing this as needed an update. So thank you for the work that's gone on to move us forward. We spend a whole lot of public money on behalf of our community, and I think our community expects us to get the best benefit for that money whenever we do spend it. And there's a wide variety of expectations as we have seen through all the feedback that we have in every consultation that we run through. I guess there's a couple of parts for me that I think need to be added, and I don't know whether they sit probably in the principles and the charter rather than necessarily in the specifics, but you might have a better space of where they fit. Thinking about how this works with those strategies that we've already adopted and said this is core to the way that we work, how do they link into this procurement policy, and is it just going to be up to those external parties to find it out for themselves and try and link their stuff in, or are we going to be explicit about this is what we've already determined as our outcomes? How do they fit into that?
Yeah, we'll be building that into our tender document, so we're being explicit what our requirements are, what they link to when we do go to market.
Okay, so maybe something general in the charter that kind of links that as an expectation, so that we're leading that. I had the same sort of question about like Selwyn Award winners or strategic partners through a long-term plan, or organisations that we have MOUs with. We've talked about CCOs having some preferential projects, but is that as exclusive as we want to be with that, or do we want to acknowledge that there's a broader piece of work that's gone on? And I wouldn't want to just include all those now, but I think at the moment CCOs is, and there's already been raised about Selwyn as opposed to Canterbury. Maybe we just need to think through about how we include something about things we've already recognised as being great in our community, and what else comes with that. Life cycle costs is mentioned a couple of times, but it's not at the front end. I didn't see it explicitly enough in that charter piece. It comes, you've mentioned it further down, and I think we totally should be thinking about the total cost of community through the life cycle of whatever's being created or done for us. And you've linked in here under the principles, it already says the best deal is set out in public value in section 7 and 8. So maybe it's about that best deal, expanding on that just a wee bit, and having that life cycle piece in there. I didn't see much about job creation and internship pathways, or ways of that what we're providing and spending public money on. What's the return for us? Like, what's the reporting that we would expect to receive through this? And I get that we don't want to just overcomplicate reports back to us, but I like to know, Sharon talks to us about the number of employees we've got. That's direct employees. There's a huge amount of employment that goes on in our district because of what we procure. I don't know what that is, and I don't have staff know what that is. And if we don't try and think about what we want to capture through this procurement process, then we won't even understand that as well. So maybe it doesn't need to be part of the policy, but we'd like to think about how that plays out in the real world.
And part of that will be within the KPIs of the contract to get that information brought back as well.
So do we need that to be explicit in here though, to then see that future? So how those sorts of things going to be reported back to us, I guess, is my and as Grant raised, these externalities, or things that aren't just cost based. It'd be quite nice to measure them and then be able to talk about them and show what the benefit was of all these other things that come into.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
We'll have to think about how we can report that back. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone, for your input, and certainly the difference, the balance between qualitative and commercial outcomes for our communities has been well discussed. The paper before us is draft and then for final adoption on the 11th of December. So between now and then, the opportunity to discuss, Sam, what you have just brought up, to add and reevaluate the draft before then. Where is the best place for that discussion to happen? Through me as a chair, or directly to Sharon through Nick to add any final bits and pieces that we would like to see before we get to adopting?
Thank you. Given that Nick is leaving us, I'd actually say via Alison, because she will sponsor this paper coming through to council, because she's had a conversation today.
Thank you very much. On that, thank you very much, Nick. All the very best. Appreciate all that you've done for the Selwyn District Council and wherever else you may go. We'll have a move in the seconder for this paper. Sam moved and Nicole Reid seconded. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. There being none, but so moved. Thank you. That's the final report in the paper. We did have an extra piece of business, 11, I guess, which was called SDC proxy. Is that the correct terminology?
Yeah, and on this matter next week is called AGM, and we need to just appoint a proxy for that meeting. We'll be there in attendance, but if the council can appoint me to carry that vote in the meeting, it just means it's all approved.
Happy to support that, Sam. So it moves that Sam is a proxy for council at the court AGM. The seconder, Councillor Dean. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, so moved. Thank you. Good public excluding minutes. Okay, so we'll now move. Thank you everyone for your attendance and our robust conversations this morning. We're now moving into public exclusion, so I have a move and a seconder for that. Rob and Sam. Moving to public exclusion. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, so moved. We'll take a couple of minutes for the live feed to finish and Sophie to stay on.